My name is Terry Hartig. I'm a professor of environmental psychology. I work at the Institute for Housing and Urban Research at Uppsala University in Sweden. I'm trained as an environmental psychologist, but I do research on nature and health using not only psychological methods, but also social epidemiological methods. And I've been doing this work for many, many years. Well, we talk about a variety of different mechanisms or pathways. So, for example, we talk about how nature or representations of nature like parks and green spaces might attract people out of doors to run or walk or engage in some other kind of physical activity. We also talk about how nature, parks and so forth, may attract people out of doors to meet their neighbors or visit with friends. That is, to have social contacts that over the long run also may work to promote health. And we also talk about how people may seek out experiences in nature to reduce stress or promote the recovery of an ability to direct attention, or perhaps to help them with other forms of restoration, that is, the restoration of those kinds of resources that people use in everyday life to meet everyday demands. So there are a variety of mechanisms that research has considered, mechanisms or pathways that are addressed by people in different disciplines with some degree of emphasis. For example, environmental health specialists may focus on air quality as something that is improved through the presence of green space and that may, over time, improve health. Well, there are very many different kinds of specific benefits that we talk about. So we've considered these different mechanisms or pathways, but they're general pathways, and they can lead to a variety of different outcomes. So it could be reduced depression or reduced likelihood of suffering a heart attack, or it could be well-being that's enhanced, improved. It could be improved social relations. It could be improved academic performance. So there are very many different kinds of outcomes that research has taken an interest in, stemming from these general pathways that could be at work. We understand that people who live with a lot of stress over a long period of time may be more prone to diseases like coronary heart disease or cardiovascular disease. If green spaces are accessible, people can go to them more regularly. Being in those places helps people reduce their stress more quickly and effectively. If they keep doing that over time, then they may reduce the likelihood that they're going to suffer from some symptoms of coronary heart disease or cardiovascular disease or some other kind of outcome. It could be mental health, for that matter, depression. I think we can, as environmental psychologists, try to translate that into the qualities of the experiences that people have. So, for example, if you have more richness, more that attracts the eye, that may engage the attention, that may keep people in that place and make it less likely for them in their thoughts to drift back to the everyday worries and so forth that they've left behind when they've gone to the park or green space. Well, the medical profession, of course, has its particular concerns, and they may regard access to nature in some way or another, a healing garden, for example, in a hospital, or the use of a park, as a complement to some kind of pharmacological or other clinical approach to treating illness, as medical doctors and other medical professionals do. The broader allied health field can focus on green space as a resource that helps people not only recover from ill health, but also helps them prevent ill health, maintain good health. Well, if you're helping to prevent ill health, then you're helping to prevent the costs associated with ill health, rather than people having to go frequently to the emergency room, for example, with some kind of problem. Then you have fewer of those visits. I must emphasize, though, that we lag behind in the estimation of the monetary savings that could be attributed to the presence of green spaces and parks and so forth. But there's reason to believe that they will reduce costs by preventing the occurrence of ill health. How does socioeconomic position in a society bear on a person's health? We could ask similar kinds of questions of nature and health. So for whom, when, under what circumstances, what kind of nature? How do we understand this? What kind of study designs do we need to use? Longitudinal designs. Experimental studies concerned with basic mechanisms, longitudinal studies that follow people through the life course, through a developmental trajectory. There are many different kinds of study designs that we could think of that are needed to address particular kinds of questions. I think the understanding of the relationship between nature and health has improved dramatically in the recent decades, in part because people have engaged with the theorizing about why nature might serve health, in part because there are many people of different disciplines bringing different methods and perspectives to the study of nature and health. People are seeing ways to make use of available research resources to try and estimate associations between different kinds of, if you will, exposures or forms of contact with nature and different kinds of outcomes. People have been engaging more with trying to understand what are the mediating processes, what is happening in the encounter between person and the natural environment that may work to generate some outcome or another. So much has happened, but there's still much left to do. Of course, there are people who make decisions about the availability of green spaces, and there are people in difficult position. They're thinking about the need to provide for housing for people, the need to provide for area for other kinds of services and workplaces and so forth. So it's to persuade them that, in fact, we can generate evidence and we can generate reasoning that puts the availability of contact with nature into some kind of a comparative framework so that they can see that, well, housing is important, but it's also important that we have this. And to look for those win-win situations so that we have housing and still accessibility to green spaces. When we can show those kinds of win-win situations, the people who actually make decisions about allocations of economic resources and space, they may find it easier to go with thinking that, yes, green infrastructure, it's a part of every city and we have to prioritize it. We are going to see increasing population over the coming decades, and a successful outcome will be when cities expand to accommodate population, and yet people living in those cities think that they are livable, think that they have good quality housing, that they can live close to work, and they can go out and find beautiful green surroundings.